I was thinking the other day, if I lost my memory, like no recollection, completely wiped, fresh start, what games would I actually choose to play again? And I don't just mean my favourite games, I mean what games would I actually like to experience again? What games felt like they changed me or changed something in me when I played them? And I'm picking purely on the kind of games that just give you that feeling where like you're locked in, you're in that world, you don't really ever want to escape the world that you're in, you don't want to come back to the real world. Games that I know would give me the same feeling the second time round without a doubt. Because don't get me wrong, some games are amazing and they have amazing music and amazing visuals and amazing storylines, but they don't hit the same when you go to replay them the second time round because you know what's coming. But these games I'm about to talk about, they hit different. I would immediately run back to. Okay, so I'm starting with one which is probably a little bit unfair because there is not one ending. It is a story and a choice based game, which means that you can get different outcomes. Now, that could describe a lot of games. Of course, I'm talking about Detroit Become Human. If you somehow have never heard of Detroit Become Human or just haven't played it, it's basically a choice based story game where you play as three different androids in like a near future world, obviously in Detroit. And every decision you make as the different characters basically leads to an overall outcome. It's possibly one of the most beautiful instances of storytelling that I have experienced in a game. This is for me top three. I wish I could delete this from my brain. So I played this game on stream with my community and they kind of helped me choose the storyline and what I would do. And the best way I can describe Detroit Become Human is an experience because it really is like what you put into it, how you'd want each of these characters to act and what you'd want them to do is basically you get what you're given. If you choose to be a really shitty person, you're going to get a really shitty outcome. But I do remember starting to play it and not really knowing what I'd signed up for and then being about an hour in and being like, whoa, okay, like I'm in. Detroit Become Human doesn't just feel like near future. It feels like tomorrow. And it's quite a scary game to play in that respect because you're thinking about androids and you're thinking about androids' rights and like the morality of all of this. And it's discussions that we probably never really think about until you're there, until you realize that androids have feelings. And then you're like, oh, maybe we should say thank you to Siri a little bit more often, you know? But yeah, I remember going in, not really knowing what I'd sign myself up for and just thinking, oh, I can just make some choices. Like, hopefully nothing bad will happen. And almost every choice I made, something bad happened. So, yeah, I overthought every single choice. I had to pause the game because I was playing it on stream. I had to pause the game multiple times so that a bad choice wasn't made in my stupidity. A lot of the choices are time based, so you really have to be quick and like impulsive for your decisions. And all of the consequences you get afterwards, you'll just sit there and be like, what have I done? What have I like what who chose that? Every wrong action leads to something so much bigger down the line that you're like, shh. And when you're first playing it, you kind of make these silly little decisions which you think are having no effect, and then about 2 hours later you realize that that one little thing that you didn't do or chose to do has completely steered this android's life down a route that you didn't even know existed. 2 hours later you will learn that there is no such thing as a casual choice, and you will learn it in the most heart wrenching way possible. I remember feeling actual stress and anxiety playing this game, and that's not to like put someone off playing it, but it's not a cozy game. It's not a casual cozy game, that's for sure. It makes you feel some stuff. It really makes you feel some stuff. It makes you reevaluate kind of the way you see the world and like the way the world's going. But yeah, the genuine anxiety over these fictional people, scary, scary stuff. Obviously, I can't replicate again because I obviously got the good ending. And that sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to say that I would love to feel that genuine anxiety and panic again, but I would. I really would. Obviously, you can replay the game and you can get different outcomes, which is fine. But once you know the outcomes, you're never really going to replicate that same feeling of anxiety, relief, whatever the emotion is that you feel when you see the consequences of your actions, you're never going to be able to feel that again for the first time. And I found that if I thought about going back on a choice, I ended up trying to play smarter rather than just playing how I'd want to play. And that felt a little bit disingenuous, so I didn't really want to play like that. I would love to go into Detroit Become Human completely blind with no memory, start again, not knowing any of the outcomes, not knowing any of the characters, and just play it through for the first time and feel everything I'm supposed to feel, absolutely everything. I would love to. So yeah, Detroit Become Human is one of those games that I would immediately play if I lost my memory. Now, the next game will probably not come as a shock to people that know me. I would absolutely play Assassin's Creed Revelations for the first time again if I could. That game is one of my favourite games, to be fair. I feel like it's one of the most underrated games in the entire franchise because people don't see it for what it actually is and how it's written, the beautiful parallels that are written about Desmond, Altair, and Ezio. I think it is an absolute masterpiece. I remember being so much younger than I am now, sitting down to play Revelations for the first time. In fact, I was actually watching my brother play it for the first time because at this point in my childhood, I was still too scared to play Assassin's Creed. I would like run on the roofs and hide. So I remember watching my brother play it and being like, oh, this is fun. This isn't a new place. But I was taking in nothing of the story because I was scared and I was young. But when I played it for myself for the first time and actually experienced the story, it is such a heart-wrenching, beautiful game that ties up so much, and it just definitely doesn't get the credit it deserves. So if you didn't know, this is the fourth game in the Assassin's Creed franchise. The first game is about Altair, and then the second game and Brotherhood is based around Ezio's life. Revelations is the end of Ezio's story, so it's the end of the trilogy, and it basically just ties up his and Altair's story perfectly. The game follows an older Ezio where he's trying to uncover the secrets of the Assassin's Brotherhood, and Altair himself has kind of got to a stage in his life where he's stopped being so driven by revenge. This game is less chaotic pain and it's more of a slow emotional realization that probably two of my favourite characters that I've ever played as have finally coming to an end. At first you're thinking, oh, it's just another Assassin's Creed game. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh, this is the end of Assassin's Creed as we know it. And it's quite devastating, actually. I remember being quite young and being like, well, what next? Nothing's going to beat these, surely. And in some ways, some people would argue nothing ever did because they are still like some of the best games. I think in retrospect, when you look back at it, you're like, oh, that was cute, that was nice. Now, obviously, we've had many Assassin's Creed games since then, but at the time when you're playing it, you don't know how long this franchise is going to go on for. This could be the end of the franchise. We kind of have no idea of like when Ubisoft was going to stop making Assassin's Creed games. We still have no idea when Ubisoft is going to stop making Assassin's Creed games. So this could have been the last ever game, and it did have that kind of feeling to it at one point. It essentially ties up Altair's and Ezio's story, and it's like a farewell to both of those characters. I think it has some of the best characters in the game. I think it has a beautiful setting. The music's wonderful. Like, I could talk about this game all day, because nothing on this earth will beat the moment that Ezio opened up the doors to the library in Masyaf after spending an entire game thinking he was going to find some great knowledge, some great power behind these doors, only for him to open the door and find the skeleton of Altair sitting there with his final memories in it. Like, there is chills and then there's chills. It is a moment in my own gaming history where I just remember bawling my eyes out. I just remember thinking, what do you mean our great mentor is here and he's dead and we get to say goodbye? And Ezio's calling him my brother. Like, there was just so much. There's so many emotions associated with this game for me. I couldn't dream that if I lost my memory that I would never get to experience this game. That feels like blasphemous, sacrilege. I remember finishing the game and kind of just sitting there and being like, like shell-shocked almost. I was just like, It's a crossover I didn't think we'd ever get, but it is the crossover we deserved. I 100% would want to feel that for the first time again. I just know I'd be crying. If I lost my memory tomorrow, I'd emotionally be better off because I wouldn't be crying and everything, but that being said, I 100% need that feeling again because there's nothing like being emotionally connected to fictional characters. And that's one thing that Assassin's Creed's pretty good at doing, is making you feel something for the characters. Now, this next one's probably a little bit controversial and a little bit strange, but it's going to be The Sims 3. A few months ago, I would have said it was universally loved, but I've actually met quite a few people in the last, I don't know, maybe year, who has said they never liked The Sims 3, and I find that wild because I think The Sims 3 was revolutionary. Now, that's a bold claim, but I think it was. You know, when people talk about the PSP and they say, like, it was before its time, and if it would have waited a couple of years, it would have been like what the Switch became, essentially. That's what I think about Sims 3. What do you mean, Sims, but open world? And the only reason it wasn't as great as it could have been is because no one's laptops or PCs could play it. It was such a hefty, demanding game, but it was wonderful. It was so before its time. I don't necessarily think I need to explain what The Sims is, but I will, just in case anyone hasn't played it. But it's a life simulation game where you play as a certain character. It could be yourself, it could be someone random you've made, and you essentially live their lives. That means feeding them, showering them, making them go to work, making them have a romantic relationship. They can have kids, you can raise the kids. It's basically playing dollies on a PC. It's great. I love The Sims. What Sims 3 was, which is so different to what came before it, was an open world life sim, and that meant that your world felt so much more alive. Previous to this point, Sims 1 and Sims 2 was very like sandboxy in the sense of you had your house and you could go other places. You could travel to a shop and you could go here and you could go there, but you had to always go through a loading screen. It definitely took the immersion out of the game. Whereas Sims 3 said, oh, your Sim's going to work? Here, watch them cycle. Let me show you them going to work. It had rabbit holes for certain things like work and school, but everything else, oh, your kid wants to go to the park after school, that's fine. Go follow them. Oh, but you want to check what the other one is? Oh, okay, just right click. Oh, here they are at home, they're making some pancakes. I don't know how anyone could dislike The Sims 3 personally. I think it had an interesting art style, that's for sure. But gameplay wise, it was stunning. And that's without me talking about any of the really overpriced DLCs or expansion packs that they released, of which I had all of them. But we won't even talk about World Adventures because World Adventures, I spent an ungodly amount of time playing World Adventures and exploring the tombs and the pyramids in Egypt. I was in those tombs like no one had ever been in those tombs before. The mummies knew me by name. And it will come as no surprise to anyone that I then became an archaeologist later on in life. I'm just saying, there's a tie there. You can take from that what you will, but I did then go on to study archaeology and become an archaeologist, and that could have been because of Sims 3 World Adventures, just saying. I still remember rushing home from school to go and play it. We won't talk about Sims 4 because Sims 4 is like that cousin that no one talks about in the family. Because Sims 3 went from being a lovely open world game with depth and lore and gameplay to whatever the hell they shat out that was Sims 4 when it first came out. And now it's just an incredibly buggy game with too many packs to own. And don't get me wrong, I play The Sims 4, but that is because I have a stupid amount of packs and a stupid amount of mods to make it playable. I never played Sims 3 with mods. Do with that information what you will. And while there is obviously replayability with The Sims, and of course there is with Sims 3, nothing will beat that first time of playing it and kind of working out the limitations of the game and what I could do and where this area led to and all of those kind of things that I don't get to experience for the first time anymore. I would love to, because it kind of let out like a childlike wonder in me. I was a teenager at this point, but I felt like a child again. Just pure unstructured gameplay, zero limitations, and yeah, sign me up because I would love to experience that for the first time again. Next, I'm going to talk about another episodic kind of choice-based story game. So maybe another little bit of a cop-out, but this is the Walking Dead series. Now, if anyone hasn't played these games, I would highly recommend. The Telltale games are, in general, a wonderful collection of games. I've played The Wolf Among Us. That is also up there, high on the list. But I couldn't make this an entire video about the Telltale games, but they are all wonderful. They're great vibes. I mean, they're not. They're actually quite traumatizing, but so The Walking Dead game is obviously based off of the series, and that means that it follows a group of survivors in a zombie apocalypse. And your choices kind of shape your relationships and therefore shape the outcome of what's going to happen to this group of survivors. What I will say about this game is that it's emotional damage packaged up in a cute little present with a bow on it. It's horrific. Quite frankly, it's horrific. Now, this is coming from someone that never watched the series because, fun fact, I'm actually terrified of zombies and I can't really watch anything with zombies in them. Despite all of that, I was actually recommended to play this series, and I did. I played it on stream, which adds a fun little layer to it because there are people in chat that obviously would make different decisions to you. But each time I went with my gut and probably chose to stand by characters I definitely should have done. Kenny. Yeah. But this one's definitely emotional damage, but in a different way. It's like emotional attachment times 100. And I don't think you necessarily know how attached you're getting to these people until one of them is at death's door and you suddenly have to choose between them. And there's moments where things are going so right that you then forget that this is the kind of game it is until you're thrust upon a situation where two of your friends are dying and you've got to choose one to save. And that's the game aggressively reminding you, don't forget what kind of game I am. I think the first time I played it, I wasn't expecting it to be such a heavy story the way it is, which one would probably say that's common sense. You're in a zombie apocalypse, people are going to die, it's going to be quite heavy. But the art style is beautiful, but it's very cartoonish, so you kind of forget that this is going to be traumatic because it just seems like a fun little game. and then it's not. You have to deal with your decisions and the consequences they have, but in The Walking Dead, that essentially means people die quite often. Your bad decisions basically either lead to a lot of deaths or less deaths. There's not really many decisions you get where someone doesn't die, which is quite hard to deal with sometimes. You end up getting very attached to the characters and the friendships they make. Lee and Clementine are probably some of my favourite game characters ever because I just feel such a deep attachment to them and the way everything turned out. I don't even want to get into that right now. The way the first game ended, and I made some bad choices. I made some bad choices in that game. There was just certain parts of like apocalyptic life that I wasn't quite prepared for. I wasn't quite prepared for the fact that the evil isn't even the zombies. Actually, unfortunately, the evil is still the humans that are out here running around. And each time I kind of forgot, like, oh, they're human, they'll be fine, until they're not, you know, until you're about to be chopped up for dinner. So if I lost my memory, would I play this game again? Yes. Yes, I would. I would like to write a note to myself, though, that basically just tells me to like brace myself and be prepared because it's a lot. It's a beautiful game, but it's a tragic game. A really tragic game. There's not really a happy ending, of course not. It's a zombie apocalypse. And then finally, we're going to talk about Zelda Twilight Princess. Probably top 3 games I've ever played. That is how Twilight Princess makes me feel. If you don't know about The Legend of Zelda, Zelda is basically a fantasy adventure game where you explore a dark, eerie version of Hyrule that we hadn't ever seen before in the franchise. There's a lot of solving puzzles, fighting enemies, and just doing the right thing, doing what the hero would do. And I'll be honest, the reason this game is on here is purely for the vibes. There are very few games for me that feel like they encapsulate everything I have ever wanted in a game. And Twilight Princess kind of does that, but it also adds a level of darkness that I didn't think I wanted, but it works. So funnily enough, I don't really like horror. I don't like anything scary. I'm actually scared of the dark, fun fact. So I wouldn't really say I massively love anything that feels a bit eerie or makes me feel uneasy, but here we are. But Twilight Princess kind of like merges this beautiful fantasy world with this rich storytelling, beautiful art style, beautiful music, puzzle solving and like fighting and adventure, and then it just chucks the darkness at you and you're like, whoa, why do I kind of like it? Also for me, bonus points, wolves are my favorite animals, and in Twilight Princess you get to play the main character as a human but also as a wolf, and I just feel like that was made for me. Nintendo saw me be born and they said, yeah, she needs that, this will keep her going. And it did. Twilight Princess has saved me in some dark times in my life, which is hilarious considering how dark of a game it is. It's kind of cozy, kind of not. It's probably the same way I describe Phasmophobia these days, which is like my cozy game. Don't know what's wrong with me, don't ask. Because I don't know, quite frankly. But it has that same feeling of like coziness, but I'm probably gonna die. I remember playing this again at a similar age. I was like child, teenager, tween, is that what they're called? Where I felt like I understood the world because it was Hyrule, and obviously we've seen Hyrule before. But it was this dark, mysterious version of Hyrule, and I couldn't quite work it out. And I do remember as a child being quite scared. I just think it was such a different style and direction for the Zelda franchise and probably Nintendo in general. I never really knew what was coming next, which is strange for a Zelda game because at this point in time, Zelda kind of had the same format throughout most of the games. You know, there was always the hero and there was always Zelda and there was always Ganondorf. I remember the Water Temple, the trauma they put me through. I'll be honest, playing them again is probably the scariest part of that game now. I remember meeting Midna for the first time and being terrified. I was like, who is this scary little goblin on my back? And slowly over time realising that she's possibly one of my favourite characters. And not only is she a funny little imp that essentially like makes fun out of Link the whole time. When we see her at the end in her full human form, I just remember thinking, wow, who's Zelda? Never heard of her in my life. Because who are you? Maybe Midna was my bisexual awakening. Do you know what? That's entirely plausible. Anyway, I digress. Beautiful game, beautiful music, beautiful storyline. Would 100% do it again, especially in this day and age when like cheats for how to get through temples are readily available, because I remember struggling through some of those temples. Jesus Christ. Do you know what I am realising now that I've got to the end of this video though, is that 3 of these games I played around a certain period of my life when I was like tween to teenager. The other games I played on stream with my community in more recent years. I don't know exactly what that is, but there's something there in the fact that those two periods of my life have probably been formative in a certain sense, but also some of my happiest, and that's just quite nice and fulfilling to think about. What all of these games have in common is that they made me fall in love with their world, and they made me fall in love with the characters in their world. Because they were successful in those things, it meant that the endings were the most beautiful, heart-wrenching moments that I've probably ever been put through. And I think it's that first-time experience which makes them really special. So yeah, if I lost my memory tomorrow, these are the games I would immediately play again. And to be honest, I'd probably make the exact same bad decisions in some of them that I have already done. And that's quite concerning, but very on brand for me. I would love to know what your top games are that you would immediately play again if you lost your memory tomorrow, because I always need game recommendations, so I would love to know. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel, and I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope none of us lose our memories, quite frankly, but if we did, we know what we'd be playing.